Have you ever looked back at your relationships and noticed something unsettling? Different names, different faces, different personalities, yet somehow the ending always feels the same. The same disappointment, the same emotional exhaustion, the same feeling that you've been here before. Maybe one of them was cold and distant. Maybe another was charming at first, but slowly pulled away. Maybe one constantly made you question your worth. On the surface, they seemed completely different. But beneath the surface, they all made you feel exactly the same. And that's when a disturbing question begins to emerge. What if you're not choosing different people at all? What if you're choosing the same person over and over and over again? Not physically, psychologically, because the truth is, most people don't have a type. They have a pattern. And until that pattern becomes visible, it quietly controls their love life from the shadows. You see, the greatest illusion in modern dating is believing that attraction is a conscious choice, that you simply meet someone, feel chemistry, and fall in love. But psychology tells a very different story. A story that's far less romantic and far more unsettling. Because according to decades of research, the people you're drawn to may have been chosen long before you ever met them, by experiences you barely remember, by wounds you never healed, by a version of yourself that still lives in the past. And if that's true, then the real question isn't, why do I keep meeting the wrong people? The real question is, why does the wrong person keep feeling right? Because to understand that, we need to go back to where your definition of love was first created. Most people believe they're searching for happiness, but your brain has a different priority. It searches for familiarity. And that's where everything begins to go wrong. Imagine two doors standing in front of you. Behind one door is a relationship that is calm, healthy, stable, predictable. Behind the other is a relationship filled with uncertainty, mixed signals, emotional highs and lows, moments of intense connection followed by distance. Logically, the choice should be obvious. Yet millions of people repeatedly walk through the second door, not because they enjoy suffering, but because suffering feels familiar, and familiarity feels safe, even when it isn't. This is one of the strangest contradictions in human psychology. Your subconscious mind doesn't automatically recognize healthy as safe. It recognizes familiar as safe. And sometimes those two things are completely different. Think about a child growing up in a home where love is inconsistent. Some days there's affection. Some days there's criticism. Some days there's silence. Some days there's emotional distance. The child learns an invisible lesson. Love is unpredictable. Love must be earned. Love comes with anxiety. Years later, that child becomes an adult. They meet someone emotionally unavailable, someone inconsistent, someone difficult to understand. And instead of feeling alarmed, they feel attracted. Not because the relationship is healthy, but because it feels familiar. It feels like home. And that's the trap. Because familiarity is a master of disguise. It can make anxiety feel like chemistry. It can make uncertainty feel like passion. And it can make emotional chaos feel like love. The most dangerous part? It feels completely natural. Because what feels normal isn't always healthy. Sometimes it's simply what you've practiced your entire life. And the longer you've practiced it, the harder it becomes to recognize anything different. This is why some people walk away from healthy relationships, not because those relationships lack value, but because they lack familiarity. The calm feels strange. The consistency feels boring. The absence of drama feels wrong. So they return to what they know, not what they need, what they know. And that's why so many people become trapped in the same cycle. Different face, same feeling. Different relationship, same wound. Different story, same ending. Because beneath every repeated heartbreak, there is usually a familiar emotional pattern quietly pulling the strings. And this raises a disturbing question. If attraction isn't guiding us toward happiness, then what exactly is it guiding us toward? The answer begins in childhood. Long before your first relationship, long before your first heartbreak, long before you even understood what love was. Because the blueprint for your future relationships may have been written before you were old enough to read. The answer begins in childhood. Long before your first relationship, long before your first heartbreak, long before you even understood what love was. Your brain was already learning what love looked like. Not from books, not from movies, but from the people raising you. Every interaction, every argument, every moment of affection, every moment of neglect was quietly teaching you a lesson. A lesson that would eventually become your blueprint for love. Psychologists call this an internal working model, but in simpler terms, it's your brain's answer to one question. What should love feel like? And the answer depends entirely on what you experienced as a child. If love was consistent, you learned that relationships are safe, that people can be trusted, that affection doesn't have to be earned, that being yourself is enough. But for many people, the story wasn't that simple. Maybe affection came and went without warning. Maybe praise was rare. Maybe you only received attention when you achieved something. Maybe love felt conditional, like a reward instead of a birthright. And without realizing it, your nervous system adapted. Because children don't question their environment. They adapt to it. If chaos surrounds them, chaos becomes normal. If emotional distance surrounds them, distance becomes normal. If love must be earned, they learn to chase it. And here's where things become dangerous. The brain doesn't distinguish between what's healthy and what's familiar. It only recognizes patterns. Years later, that same child becomes an adult searching for love, but they're not searching blindly. They're following an invisible map. A map created years ago, a map that keeps pointing toward people who recreate familiar emotions. Not familiar faces, familiar feelings. This is why two completely different partners can make you feel exactly the same. One may be quiet, the other outgoing. One may be successful, the other struggling. But both trigger the same emotional experience, the same insecurity, the same longing, the same fear, the same chase. Because your subconscious isn't evaluating their personality, it's recognizing a pattern. And when it finds one, it whispers something powerful. I've been here before. Imagine someone texts you every day for 2 weeks. Good morning, good night. Random messages throughout the day. Slowly, they become part of your routine. You begin looking forward to hearing from them. Their name appearing on your screen starts to make you smile. And then one day, they disappear. No explanation, no message, nothing. You tell yourself you don't care, but somehow, you can't stop thinking about them. You check your phone. You reread old conversations. You wonder what happened. And then, 3 days later, it isn't. Dopamine is the chemical of wanting, the chemical of anticipation, the chemical that keeps you chasing. And here's where things get dangerous. The brain releases more dopamine when rewards are unpredictable. Not predictable, unpredictable. This is why slot machines are addictive. You never know when the reward is coming. So your brain keeps pulling the lever again and again and again. Now, replace the slot machine with a relationship. One day they're affectionate. The next day, they're distant. One day they make you feel special. The next day they make you question everything. And without realizing it, your brain enters the same loop, waiting, hoping, chasing, craving the next emotional reward. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, and it's one of the strongest behavioral conditioning mechanisms ever discovered. The less predictable the reward, the harder it becomes to walk away. This is why toxic relationships often finally okay. But there's another chemical involved, one that's even more surprising: oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding. Most people assume oxytocin is only created through love and affection, but that's not entirely true. It can also strengthen bonds after conflict, after stress, after emotional turbulence, which means every painful cycle followed by reconciliation can actually strengthen attachment, even when the relationship is unhealthy. This explains something many people struggle to understand: why leaving a toxic relationship can feel harder than leaving a healthy one. Because by that point, you're not just attached emotionally, you're attached neurologically. Your brain has learned to associate uncertainty with reward, chaos with connection, stress with intimacy. And suddenly, peace feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. Which brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths in relationship psychology. Healthy love often feels boring to people. But if your brain keeps choosing what's familiar, and your nervous system keeps rewarding what hurts you, then an even deeper question emerges. Why does the mind keep returning to the same wound? Why repeat the same heartbreak again and again and again? The answer takes us into one of the darkest ideas in psychology. The idea that we are unconsciously trying to win a battle we already lost. Somewhere in the world right now, someone is desperately trying to earn love from a person who cannot give it. They are overthinking every text, analyzing every conversation, blaming themselves for the distance, convincing themselves that if they just try harder, everything will finally work. What they don't realize is that this isn't a new battle. It's an old one they've been fighting their entire life. More than a century ago, Sigmund Freud noticed something strange. People often repeat the very experiences that hurt them most, not because they enjoy suffering, but because some part of them believes that this time, the ending will be different. He called this repetition compulsion, the unconscious tendency to recreate painful experiences from the past, not because we want pain, but because we want resolution. Imagine a child who spent years trying to earn love from an emotionally unavailable parent. No matter what they did, the attention they needed never fully arrived. The validation never came. The emotional connection always felt just out of reach. That experience leaves a mark, not just emotionally, neurologically. The wound remains unfinished, and unfinished wounds have a strange way of demanding completion. Years later, that child becomes an adult. They meet someone emotionally distant, someone difficult to read, someone who gives just enough affection to keep hope alive. And suddenly, the attraction feels overwhelming, almost magnetic. But here's the disturbing part. They aren't just attracted to the person, they're attracted to the opportunity to finally win a battle they lost years ago. Without realizing it, they're trying to heal the past through the present, trying to get from a romantic partner what they never received from a caregiver, trying to finally feel chosen, loved, enough. This is why people often describe toxic relationships as feeling strangely familiar, because they are. Not familiar to the conscious mind, familiar to the nervous system, familiar to the wounded child still living beneath the surface. And this is where relationship expert Harville Hendrix introduces a fascinating idea. According to imago theory, we don't just randomly choose partners. We unconsciously seek people who resemble important emotional figures from our childhood, not necessarily in appearance, but in emotional energy, their patterns, their behavior, their way of making us feel. It's as if the subconscious is searching through a crowd asking, "Who reminds me of home?" Unfortunately, home isn't always healthy. The person who ignored your emotional needs, the person whose love felt conditional, the person who was present physically but absent emotionally. These experiences become embedded in your blueprint, and when someone activates that blueprint later in life, the attraction can feel electric. Destiny, chemistry, soulmate-level connection. But sometimes, what feels like destiny is simply familiarity wearing a disguise. The same heartbreak, different face. The same emotional distance, different personality. The same abandonment, different relationship. The same wound, different body. And once you see the pattern, you can never unsee it, because suddenly the question changes. You stop asking, "Why do I keep meeting these people?" and start asking, "Why does a part of me keep choosing them?" And that question changes everything. Because the moment you realize the pattern is inside you, you finally gain the power to break it. But awareness alone isn't enough. Understanding the trap doesn't automatically free you from it. So how do you stop confusing chemistry with familiarity? How do you distinguish a healthy connection from an old wound in disguise? And most importantly, how do you rewrite a blueprint you've been following your entire life? That's where the real transformation begins. The moment most people discover their pattern, they make a dangerous mistake. They assume awareness is enough. They think, now that I understand why I do this, I'll stop doing it. But understanding the pattern and escaping the pattern are two very different things. Because your subconscious doesn't change simply because you've learned something new. It changes when you repeatedly choose something different. And that's where the real work begins. Every time you enter a relationship, your brain asks a question. But it's probably not the question you think. It isn't asking, "Is this person good for me?" It's asking, "Does this person feel familiar?" And for years, that question may have been leading your entire love life. The challenge now is learning to ask a better one. How do I feel around this person when I'm not chasing them? Because chasing creates illusions. Anxiety creates intensity. Uncertainty creates obsession. But none of those things tell you whether someone is actually right for you. This is where many people confuse chemistry with compatibility. Chemistry says, "I can't stop thinking about them." Compatibility asks, "Can I build a life with them?" Chemistry says, "I feel a rush when they text me." Compatibility asks, "Do I feel emotionally safe around them?" Chemistry creates sparks. Compatibility creates stability. And one of the hardest lessons in adult relationships is realizing that those two things are not the same. In fact, the healthiest relationship you ever experience may not begin with fireworks. It may begin with something far less dramatic: peace. And if you've spent your life associating love with anxiety, peace can feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. Your mind may interpret calmness as boredom, consistency as lack of passion, reliability as lack of chemistry. But what if that's not boredom? What if that's safety? What if, for the first time in your life, your nervous system simply isn't fighting for survival? This is what psychologists call a pattern interrupt. The moment you consciously choose against your automatic attraction. Not because the familiar person stopped attracting you, but because you finally understand where that attraction is coming from. You stop blindly following chemistry and start investigating it. You stop asking, "Do I want them?" and start asking, "Why do I want them?" That single question can change everything. Because attraction is information, not instruction. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you should follow it. And perhaps that's the most liberating realization of all. You are not doomed to repeat your past. You are not condemned to relive the same heartbreak forever. The blueprint may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. Because every pattern survives on one thing: unconsciousness. The moment you become aware of it, the spell begins to break. Maybe that's why some people spend years dating the same person in different bodies. Not because they're unlucky, not because they're broken, but because they were following a map they never realized they had. A map drawn by childhood experiences, old wounds, unfinished battles, and familiar pain disguised as love. But today, you can choose a different map, a different path, a different future. Because the person who changes your life may not be the one who gives you butterflies. They may be the one who gives you peace. And if peace feels unfamiliar, maybe that's exactly where your healing begins. Before you leave, think about your last relationship and the one before that. What patterns keep showing up? What emotions keep repeating? What type of person keeps finding their way back into your life? Because sometimes the most important discoveries aren't about other people. They're about ourselves. The moment you stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "Why does a part of me keep choosing this?" everything changes. Because awareness turns repetition into choice. And choice is where freedom begins. So tell me in the comments, what's one relationship pattern you've noticed in your own life? And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better, subscribe to Echo Thought. Because understanding human behavior isn't just about understanding others. It's about finally understanding yourself. Until next time, stay curious.